Hello to everybody watching the series today. Today we have Dr. G. Chamberland, who is the CEO and Chief Regulatory Officer of Tetra Bio-Pharma. Tetra Bio-Pharma is based in Canada and is focused on developing cannabinoid-derived medicine, supporting scientific validation and safety data required for inclusion in the pharmaceutical industry. The initial focus of Tetra Bio-Pharma is the therapeutic areas of inflammation, pain, oncology, and ophthalmology through a robust pipeline using multiple delivery systems. So today we welcome G. G, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So G, everybody would be super excited of what Tetra Bio-Pharma is all about, what the company has already achieved and is trying to achieve, and who are the key players in your team who you believe make Tetra Bio-Pharma the company it is today?
All right, good question. Well, one of the key factors about Tetra is, everybody looks at the cannabinoid, that's the industry, multiple different business models out there. Yep. What's really unique about Tetra is we're very similar to the way GW Pharma out of the United Kingdom kind of created itself and ended up being acquired by Jazz for, $7.2 billion. Mm-hmm. They were developing cannabinoids just like any other prescription drug, convinced the European Medicines Agency first, and then basically the US Food and Drug Administration with their Epidiolex. That is exactly the type of company we are. We're basically trailing right behind them in developing drugs as prescription drugs. We have a global focus. So as a company, we're focusing both on North America and Europe. We have exchanges with the European competent authorities. So we're eyeing on both markets. Obviously, our core access is really, like you said, inflammation, pain, basically an immunomodulator. So what we have that's really unique that no other cannabinoid company has out there is a non-scheduled, which means it's not regulated like any cannabis type of phytocannabinoid. Mm-hmm. It's basically a synthetic cannabinoid that's basically in vitro studies is 1,000 times more potent than CBD. And it's very, very selective for CB2 receptors. So it has a much cleaner safety profile. So we're advancing this drug as an immunomodulator, and we're developing it basically to help prevent things like the hyperinflammation that people see in viral infections and other conditions, traumatic injury, and basically sepsis. We've been studying this drug for over 12 years as a potential treatment for preventing sepsis. And as people know, there are millions of people that die globally each year from sepsis, and that's basically an untouched medical development area because most drugs have failed. So, we're pretty fortunate to have had 12 years of research. And we have US and European granted patents for this compound. So this is puts us in a very interesting position. Then the other unique area is we've been developing the delivery of phytocannabinoids and synthetic cannabinoids by inhalation. So an area where actually GW Pharma had failed and has never gone into, which was inhalation. This is an area where we've been succeeding at, and we've had recognition, obviously, by the FDA. Been working with the regulator since 2016, and over a year ago began working with the EMA to basically bring our inhalation technology. So I say those are really who we are, if you take a look at Tetra.
Perfect. And before I go to the team, I would be very interested to understand that, if I'm not wrong, that you have already approvals from the FDA from US, then you are working with Health Canada, and you're working with the European regulators as well. So maybe if you can shed some light on that topic for us.
We initially began exchanges with the US FDA actually in July of 2016. So we've been at this for a long time. Yep. Our first significant approvals were for a very large phase 1 trial in healthy volunteers to study inhaled cannabis, smoked, then followed by, say, vaporized. But we even were granted by the FDA the permission and Health Canada to go and study basically the full profile of smoked cannabis, which included full pharmacokinetics, single escalating dose, multiple escalating dose, and I should say multiple day escalating dose, so 7 days of inhaled. But we also looked at, other than safety, we looked at pharmacodynamics, and that's where we really began to understand the potential of cannabis for treating and managing pain. And it led then to other clinical trials being approved. To date, we've completed 4 clinical trials. And recently in 2019, the FDA approved our phase 2 trial in advanced cancer patients with inhaled cannabis, and then the reborn trial in January of this year, which is very significant. It's the first trial that's going head-to-head against immediate release morphine. And that, to me, is going to be a game changer, especially with what's going on here in the US. You're probably still seeing a lot of the lawsuits coming from, like New York State against some of the, manufacture of opioids. So we need an alternative to opioids. So if we have a success in this reborn trial, this is going to be a big game changer. And for our immunomodulator, well, we've had obviously multiple exchanges with the FDA and Health Canada, and basically the green light to submit our protocols to now enter into what they call an adaptive clinical trial into volunteers and COVID patients. And in Europe, well, in parallel, we've been talking obviously with a competent authority in Europe to discuss both drugs. So we are discussing the reborn trial, the plenitude trial with the European agencies, as well as our plans for the immunomodulator. So as you're seeing, we're working in 3 countries, even though Europe is not a single country, but it's a single, centralized regulator.
So for the understanding of our viewers and in layman terms, would these drugs, when approved, would they be over-the-counter drugs or specifically prescribed drugs? So what it would be the market about? Because I think it's a $20 billion industry, which you guys are targeting.
Yeah, you're correct. These are all prescription drugs. We're not going after, let's say, over-the-counter. In actual fact, just from a regulatory perspective and for the audience to understand, a drug must first become a prescription drug before it can ever become an over-the-counter, basically because the regulator wants to be sure that the day it is an over-the-counter, that you don't need a physician to be watching over you to be sure there are no side effects. So typically a drug becomes prescription after, say, 10, 20 years of being safe. Then the regulators may decide, okay, you can buy it off the shelf on your own and self-medicate. So cannabinoids we're still a long way from there. And that's at therapeutic doses. Doesn't mean that, for example, FDA or another government may not decide to allow it as, say, a supplement type of product on the market, but that would typically be at very low doses, not at doses that would have shown to be, medicines in clinical trials.
Got it. So, as well, when I was looking into Tetra Bio-Pharma, I saw that you guys have a very strong team in place, which knows about the clinical procedures, which knows about the financial markets, which knows about the regulations and stuff. So maybe if you shed some light for us for the key players who are making the show possible for you guys.
Yeah, one of the really unique features of Tetra is actually, like you said, basically our operational teams. We're a very strong company in the regulatory side, the manufacturing side, and I mean the manufacturing science of cannabinoids, and obviously clinical operations and basically R&D. So we have a research lab that does discovery, intellectual property, that's based in a university called Dalhousie in Halifax, basically in one of our provinces in Canada, well-known university. There we have our chief scientific officer, who's been around the field of cannabinoids for over 30 years, published numerous papers, presented numerous times in Europe. So very well-known people. And we have 2 other physicians, actually, anesthesiologists that do the research on our sepsis drug, and obviously our inhaled studies. So very strong on that part in the science. And obviously we have, like I said, multiple granted patents in both Europe and the United States. Then on the clinical side, we have people that come from the clinical research organization industry.
Yeah.
They basically design and manage the firms that run our trials. Obviously, we're too small to have our internal, let's say, operations like Merck Frost or Pfizer to run our own clinical trials, but regulators want us to manage the firms that do this because we're ultimately responsible. So we have that capability inside. Then obviously we submit our own files to regulators. That includes FDA, Health Canada, and in EMA, our first actually European employee is a regulatory person for being able to submit to the European Medicines Agency on our own. So that was really, that shows you the way we think. When we go after the view of selling in a country, we also make sure we're present there. We actually have people in Europe. Our first scientific writer actually was based in Europe and now is in the United States. So it's the way we think. We look for the talent, we bring them in, and we want people that have done it before. We don't want to hire just somebody, say, straight out of university that wants a career at, I'll say, the driver level, the person. Because we have two layers. We have our executive, and then we have our, what I call our operational executive levels. Well, all these people have developed drugs before, and that to me is key to the success. And then one thing that's really key, especially in the pharmaceutical area, and that's one area that really differentiates us from, let's say, here in North America, at least, the cannabis industry. We have a very strong quality and compliance group because the regulators expect us to follow the GMPs, the GLPs, and the GCP regulations. But we have to audit all our vendors, all our sites, clinical sites, to be sure they conform to the European regulations. Imagine investing $10 million in a clinical trial. At the end, the inspectors go through the trial sites and they say, oh, sorry, we're going to invalidate this site because they didn't follow the GCPs. Well, you lost your $10 million of investment. So that's really key. You have to look at that. You can't pretend the regulations don't exist. They're there in the end to protect consumers by ensuring the drug is safe and does what it is claiming to do. So that's basically who we are. And our board of directors, we changed basically 50% of the independent directors. And now actually we have a very strong board from a capital market point of view, which is very interesting. So it brings us, we were talking about financing, so it adds to our ability to gain, how can I say, access to the various financing institutions and reputation. And that to me is a very, very welcome. And I'd say also I interact with the board on a weekly basis, and I would say that I feel they're also part of my team. I'm not alone, say, reporting to them. I actually get guidance from them. I can talk to them, and I feel they're very constructive and very, how can I say, they're kind of really in the race. Like right now in Europe, you guys are, huge European soccer competition. Well, I feel they're on the ice with me, on the field with me, running so we can bring our drugs to the market. And that's a great feeling. This is not my first public company, but it's nice to feel that I actually have a board that's right beside me, taking this all the way into the goals.
So in short, what you're trying to say is that you love your job, you love your team, you love what you guys are doing, because for us as well, it checks all the three marks when it comes to capital market exposure, finance, which for many investors is a big thing to see that if there are experts there. Then you have the clinical research, strong team there. And then the third part of the triangle is the compliance, that you're taking the compliance from day one, working side by side, not just completing the product first and then going for regulators, compliance issues.
And then in our case, I would add a fourth one, so I'll kind of deform your triangle.
Okay.
We also strongly believe that our inhalation technology is going to be a game changer in the race against the opioids. And that is from years of research we've been doing since 2016. We really believe that our product is going to be successful against opioids. And if, like I said, if that happens, Tetra is then going to become a new milestone in medicine.
But I really hope that it won't be difficult to have an interview with you at that point, right?
No, I'll always be there.
G, also, our viewers would be very interested in understanding from the CEO himself that how do you see the next 12 months, the story evolving and the research approvals, how the roadmap looks like?